Let's not pretend otherwise. This was an execution. In today's story of deception, drugs, and debts, how is it possible that an ex lecturer, someone who cares for his partner with multiple sclerosis, was ruthlessly executed at his remote Welsh farmhouse? 74-year-old Gerald Corrigan had lectured in photography and video at Blackpool College of Art in Lancashire before retiring to a remote cottage on the isolated coast of Anglesey in North Wales with his long term partner, Marie Bailey. Gerard loved nature, wildlife, fishing, and if you know the area around Anglesey, you know that this really was his perfect spot to spend the rest of his life, as it was so quiet. The sort of place you would need a specific reason to visit. Marie called him her best friend and soulmate, and they had their routines, they'd been together a long time. Marie tended to go to bed early, whilst Gerard tended to stay up until the early hours watching TV. They enjoyed their lives, they enjoyed their retirement and this beautiful spot. Soon after midnight, in the early hours of Good Friday, in April 2019, Gerard had been watching TV when the satellite was lost. He went outside to adjust the satellite, which was on the ground, but when he bent down, he felt the most terrible pain. He thought it was an electric shock, and somehow, pouring with blood, he managed to stumble back in the house, and Marie called the emergency services. As we hear so often, paramedics first on the scene, their instincts tend to be really good. They tend to know a lot of what's just happened. And in this situation here, Gerard was losing a lot of blood, and this didn't look like an electric shock to the paramedics. So one of them went outside from where the incident happened, and they found the bolts from a crossbow. And they took it to the hospital with Gerard, who was given emergency surgery. It was soon confirmed that it was no electric shock. He'd been shot by a crossbow, and the bolts had passed completely through his body, causing the most terrible internal damage, lacerating his spleen, penetrating his large intestine and stomach, liver, colon, and diaphragm, before bruising his heart. It then passed through his forearm before hitting the wall of the house. Gerard stayed in hospital where he remained critically ill in an induced coma, and by May he developed severe sepsis. Gerard died on the 11th of May, aged just 74 years old. Detectives by now knew full well that Gerard had suffered an attack with a crossbow that night when he stepped outside to sort the satellite. An analysis of Gerard's injuries and the scene allowed police to very easily and accurately identify a spot behind a garden wall, about 10 metres from where Gerard was shot, where the shooter must have retired to after messing with the satellite to lure Gerard outside. So they must have known that Gerard would have been up. It must have been somebody he knew, right? In response to an appeal for information about why anybody would ever have wanted to hurt Gerard, such a gentle soul, a local outdoor supplier came forward and they managed to identify anybody on Anglesey who had bought a crossbow in the last 10 years. There were 15 people, but most had bought them years ago. The last person to buy a crossbow in April 2019 was 39-year-old Terry Whall. Wall had also ordered the specific crossbow tips used to shoot Gerard, and the only other person who had bought these tips was planning a hunting trip to South Africa, which left Wall as the prime suspect. And in his garden was a punch bag punctured with holes caused by these tips. Had Wall been practicing his target practice? On the 3rd of June, 2 weeks after the police interview, Wall's partner's Land Rover was found burnt out nearby. Now, this raised further questions with the police, already suspicious about Wall, and so they accessed the telematic data. I'm not sure if that's familiar to you, it was all new to me, but it transpires that modern, more pricey, expensive cars have electronic systems which can track and store information about its movements. And the data was telling. It revealed that Wall had been parked at a local beach just by Gerard's home at 10 past 11 on the night of the murder. The boot was opened at 11 minutes past 11 and closed 39 seconds later, which was, detectives thought, Wall getting the crossbow out ready to use it. Gerald Corrigan was shot at either 29 or 30 minutes past midnight on the 19th of April. The detectives were sure the shooting took place at this time, as Sky TV records showed that the programme Gerard was watching stopped at 28 minutes past midnight, and it was 12 minutes after this that the boot of Wall's Land Rover was opened, shut in 14 seconds later, with the crossbow now in the car as he was ready to drive off. And more technology, this time in the form of CCTV, tracked Wall's 8-mile trip back home, before the telematic data again showed the boot opening at 3 minutes to 1 and remaining open for 5 minutes, whilst Wall removed the crossbow and presumably put it somewhere. So just who was this Terry Whall? Aged 39, he was born in the East London area. He came to Anglesey at the end of his marriage in 2009. He married again, it didn't work out. He was a father and a successful sports trainer in the local area. He was doing really well at his business. Then in 2018, he'd met a new local partner and had been living with her and her children on Anglesey. And despite the evidence stacking up against him, Wall continued to deny any involvement in the murder. In fact, he said he'd never even met Gerald. And at the time of the attack, he told detectives, quite a strange alibi this one, I think, considering he'd been married twice and he was living with his partner. But anyway, he told detectives he was having sex with another man in a nearby field near Gerard's house, an ex-customer of his. He said he'd initially kept this quiet as it was his business. But this alibi came crashing down when this man he named emphatically denied having any form of sexual relationship with Wall. Detectives felt they had their man, but they were still unsure of the motive. But let's come to that after we hear about the trial, where Wall continued to maintain his innocence. Summing up the case of the prosecution, the QC said, "Whoever loaded the crossbow with that broad head knew precisely what they wanted to do, to kill Mr. Corrigan in the most brutal way possible. Why he was shot we may never know," he said, adding that the prosecution does not have to prove a motive. And the jury didn't believe Wall and unanimously returned a verdict of guilty of murder. For this crime, Terry Whall was sent to prison for life with a minimum tariff of 31 years. 3 other men were convicted for offences relating to the burning out of the Land Rover, but all said they believed that this was done as part of an insurance scam and they knew nothing about the murder of Gerard. The devastation caused to the family of Gerard was evidenced by the victims' statements given by family members. And what was even worse is they just didn't know why Gerard had been killed, and in such a horrible way as well. So what could the motive have been? Well, during the trial, one name kept coming up: Richard Wynne Lewis. And I would suggest that despite the police saying otherwise, this man is the key to really understanding all the puzzles in this case. In court, Marie had said that this man, Lewis, had been responsible for obtaining almost £250,000 from the couple through fraud. It was money they believed they were giving him related to property development, land sales, and horses. He was into selling horses. And just days before Gerard was killed, it transpired that he told Lewis when he asked for yet more cash from the couple, there is no more money. Marie also alleged in court that Lewis had been growing cannabis on the couple's land. Gerard had let him do it because he'd hoped that Marie could use the cannabis to ease the symptoms of her multiple sclerosis, but angrily stopped it when he discovered that a large-scale cannabis farm equipped with fans and heaters had been installed. It was a 30-acre site. It was taken advantage, she said. Then get this. The jury was told that Wall and Lewis had an argument over money 6 weeks after Gerard was shot. It is said that Wall was £36,000 in debt, it's unclear why. The jury also heard that towards the end of May 2019, Wall had parked outside Lewis's home for 3 nights in succession, the dead of night, and there was a strong suggestion that he may have been planning to kill or injure Lewis by garroting him with piano wire. A garrote was found in Wall's car, while his internet history showed that he'd recently bought piano wire and Googled central nervous system neck injury. When Lewis was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to murder and fraud, but was later released and not charged at the time of any offence. So just what was the connection between Lewis and Terry Whall? Lewis gave an interview, a really interesting interview, to the Times newspaper, where he claimed that Gerard was murdered because of his association with him and a dispute with an unnamed drugs lord, maintaining that he was set to be Wall's next victim. He said the following: Wall came here to my house and said, "My job is to kill people, and I'm going to kill you if you don't correspond with us." He wanted to take me away, but I said, "I'm not going anywhere, not a chance." Lewis continued that he called the police, who then arrested Wall. "That's when I realised what happened to Gerard," he said. "Before that, I thought it had been a terrible accident with kids, one of the nearby caravan parks. I now know that we were both to be killed." They stalked this place for the same amount of time as they did Gerard. Then let's forward wind to November 2022. After an investigation into Lewis due to information received after Gerald's murder, Lewis was jailed for 6 years for the fraud against Gerard and Marie and others. There was even a Facebook set up looking for information about where he was. He's angered a lot of people in Anglesey, where he grew up. Anyway, in the case, Marie was quoted as saying about Lewis, "He has no notion of decency or humanity. My hopes of retiring without worry have been torn to shreds." And the couple's daughter, Fiona, summed up very well my thoughts on this story, and maybe yours as well. She said that the injuries caused by a crossbow are not designed to kill, they are designed to mutilate. She said, "This particular weapon is designed to bring down big game, and that is what my dad became, prey. We may never know why." So there we have it, a story that throws up as many questions as answers. Wall and Lewis both clearly have a very distant relationship with the truth, but the real answers to Gerard's death surely lie in the relationship between these two men. But whatever the truth, and will we ever find out, the family of Gerard have to live with what happened to him on that dreadful night, as his life was tragically cut short, and they have to live their lives without him. If you found this story interesting, please do watch another of my videos. Until next time, I've been Adam Lloyd.